Check. Yeah. Okay.
Shana Tova. It is so wonderful to begin our celebration of Rosh HaShanah together with all of you, both here in person and those of you watching via the live stream. A master archer was passing through a town and he saw a barn wall with hundreds of circles with bullseyes shot accurately, dead center. He was amazed and wanted to meet this master archer to see what he could learn from him to perfect his own shooting. He spent the day exploring the village looking for the marksman. Eventually, he discovered it was a young girl. He went with her to the barn with the perfect bullseyes and asked her, "Did you do that?" "Yes, I did," she replied. The archer said to her, "I don't understand how you can always hit the target with 100% accuracy. I'm great, but even I can't do that." "Actually, it's pretty easy," she said. "You see, I shoot first, and then I draw the circles." This year, as we've been preparing for these High Holy Days, it has felt like we've been aiming at a moving target. I hope that by the end of these 10 days, we will have been able to draw a circle around our arrow to see that a bullseye has been achieved. But on this day, as we fire the first arrow, I want to thank all of you in this community, both here and at home, for your flexibility and understanding as we have drawn and redrawn the target at which we have been aiming. Today we are a community in 2 locations, with people both in the sanctuary and in their homes. But as a single community, we will be praying together, singing together, supporting each other, and welcoming the new year as one. The service might feel a little bit different for those in the sanctuary. The voices of the choir will come from behind, from the foyer. We will have soloists who will be singing at various points, and we do invite you to join in with them, maybe a little quietly if you're in the sanctuary, but at full volume if you are singing at home and singing with us. And so as we begin this morning, with the joy of being together, both here in person and on the screen, we sing Samachti, celebrating how happy we are to be here in this moment. We continue now with the Chatzi Kaddish on page 141.
turn to page 142 and rise now as we are able, facing the east for Baruch Hu. You may be seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvorei choshech, osei shalom uvorei et hakol, or olam ba'otzar chaim, orot me'ofel amar vayehi. Habe'ir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha barachamim uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit. Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai kulam b'chochma asita. Mal'ah ha'aretz kinyanecha. Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shevach ma'aseh yadecha v'al me'orei or she'asita yafa'arucha sela. Or chadash al Tzion ta'ir v'nizkechu lanu mehara le'oro. Baruch atah Adonai yotzer ha'me'orot. Page 146. Ahava rabav tanu Adonai Eloheinu, chemla gedola v'tera chamalta aleinu. Love abundant, love unstinting, our God, you have enfolded us in love. Tender compassion beyond all bounds, your precious gift. Our fathers and mothers gave you their trust, and you gave them Torah, laws by which to live. For their sake, teach us as well. Grace us with your guidance. Loving Father, merciful Mother of all, grant us clear understanding that we may listen, learn, and teach, preserve, practice, and fulfill with love every lesson of your Torah. May learning your Torah lift up our eyes. May our hearts embrace your mitzvot. Unite us in love and reverence for you, that we may never feel ashamed of our deeds. Ki b'shem kodshecha gadol hanora betachnu, nagila v'nismecha b'shuatecha. We have trusted in your great and holy name. Now let us celebrate at last the joy of your salvation.
V'haviheinu l'shalom me'arba kanfot ha'aretz, v'tolecheinu k'mamiyot ha'aretzeinu, ki el po'el yishmot otam, uvada v'charta mikol am v'lashon, v'keratana l'shemcha hagadol selam emet, lehodot lecha v'liachincha be'ahava. Baruch atah Adonai, Elohim Yisrael, be'ahava.
mindful of all my mitzvot and do them. This and our freedom to do so are our liberation. As we sang at the shores of the sea, Mi Chamocha is on page 164. Service, we have a time when we rise and step forward as if we were entering the court of majesty, naming what we love and what we long for in the name of those who came before us, in the name of our own strengths and abilities, and in the name of all that is most precious and holy. As we rise now for this Amidah, this courtly prayer, in whatever ways we are able, we turn inward even as we sing aloud, calling on the words of the page and the prayers of our heart. Page 166.
All
You may be seated. As we turn to page 174 for Unatana Tokef, there are years when encountering the list in this prayer of the many ways that people may be fated to die can feel uncomfortable and off-putting. The theology of this medieval prayer seems on first glance to say that who will live and who will die is about divine punishment and reward. We know our world is more complex than that, and we know that good deeds and bad are no guarantee as to what's to come. But other years, perhaps a year like this one, we are so aware of our own vulnerability and the vulnerability of those whom we love. In years like this, we know that this prayer is not about determining who will live and who will die, but about acknowledging that we will all go that way someday, and that until we get there, we will not know how or when. What can we do with this recognition of our mortality, our finitude? Our tradition says on this day we look it in the eye and we name it out loud, that each of us will have an ending. Among the very first losses of last year was Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who I will tell you came to me in a dream the other night and said she will be visiting this congregation on October 4th, so you can save the date. She said, not in my dream, fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. This year, on this her yard site, we remind ourselves whether we live or die between this Rosh HaShanah and the next is ultimately out of our control. But what we do with whatever time is allotted to us, how we choose to act toward others, to fight for what we care about and inspire others to join us, how we raise our voices toward justice and righteousness, those are how we make meaning of the time we have. Let us proclaim the power of this day. And so a great shofar will cry Tekiyah, and a still small voice will be heard. Page 178. On Rosh HaShanah, this is written. On the fast of Yom Kippur, this is sealed. How many will pass away from this world? How many will be born into it? Who will live and who will die? Who will reach the ripeness of age? Who will be taken before their time? Who by fire and who by water? Who by war and who by beast? Who by famine and who by drought? Who by earthquake and who by plague? Who by strangling and who by stoning? Rest and who will wander? Who will be tranquil and who will be tormented? Who will be calm and who troubled? Who will live in poverty and who in prosperity? Who will be humbled and who exalted? But through return to the right path, through prayer and righteous giving, we can transcend the harshness of the decree. Continue with the Kedusha on page 184. Please rise in body or in spirit.
As we feel the kadosh, the sanctity of that moment and that song, we take a moment now for our own silent prayers, continuing with our midah, with the words of our hearts or the words of our machzor, our prayer book. As a peak moment within our Rosh HaShanah liturgy, we offer the Great Aleinu, which can be found on page 202. This is the original place where the prayer was recited, and it ultimately proved to be so popular that we began saying it every day in our liturgy. But it is only on Rosh HaShanah that the Great Aleinu is recited, and those who choose to prostrate themselves before God, feeling God's presence in this space. Cantor Hollis and Rabbi Geordie will be bowing and kneeling on behalf of our community as we recite the words of this prayer. We turn to page 202. We rise in body or in spirit, facing towards the east for the Great Aleinu. As we turn to Avinu Malkeinu on page 222 and 223, we take a moment to reflect on the words of this prayer. This prayer imagines a God with whom we are intimately connected as we are with a parent, and almost simultaneously, it imagines God as a ruler who is by definition above us and distant. During these high holy days, we seek to be in relationship with God as our Father, our King, our Mother, our Queen, our parent, our ruler. We take a moment to reflect on the words of this prayer.
Amen.
As we remain standing, we now turn to page 228 for our Torah service, beginning with Adonai, Adonai.
Baruch Eloheinu Shabranu Lefodo. Baruch Eloheinu Shabranu Lefodo. Baruch Eloheinu Shabranu Lefodo. Lefodo. Odapam, Odapam. Lefodo. Odapam, Odapam. Lefodo. Baruch Eloheinu Shabranu Lefodo. Lefodo. Vehivti lanu min hatoim. Vehivti lanu min hatoim. Vehivti lanu min hatoim. Min hatoim. Odapam, Odapam. Min hatoim. Odapam, Odapam. Vehivti lanu min hatoim. Min hatoim. V'natan lanu Torah emet. V'natan lanu Torah emet. V'natan lanu Torah emet. Torah emet. Odapam, Odapam. Torah emet. Odapam, Odapam. Torah emet. V'natan lanu Torah emet. Torah emet. V'chaye olam nata b'tochenu. V'chaye olam nata b'tochenu. V'chaye olam nata b'tochenu. B'tochenu. Odapam, Odapam. B'tochenu. Odapam, Odapam. B'tochenu. V'chaye olam nata b'tochenu. B'tochenu.
V'tahei lebeinu, v'tahei lebeinu, v'tahei lebeinu, yavtecha bemet. V'tahei lebeinu, v'tahei lebeinu, v'tahei lebeinu, yavtecha
If you'll please be seated. The blessings for the Torah are found on page 230 in your Mahzor. And the Torah passage that we'll be reading this morning is on page 238, taken from the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis, chapter 21. It is a Torah story with ups and downs, with highs and lows, with birth, near death, and then in some ways rebirth throughout. It speaks to a whole range of experiences and emotions, both for Abraham, Sarah, and Isaac, and also for Hagar and Ishmael. And we might think about the fact that we include both of these stories, both of these people as ancestors of great nations in the passage that we choose to recite on this day of Rosh HaShanah. And so we're going to invite up all of our Torah readers to join us at the front. This morning we're going to offer one single aliyah as a community. In past years we've called people up to celebrate joyful occasions. We've called people up in need of healing. We've called people up who've recovered, who've had challenges over the past year, who are looking forward to something new in the forthcoming year, for a whole host of reasons. But the truth is that this year all of us are really in need of that aliyah. All of us could do with that little bit of strength that comes from offering the Torah blessings together communally. And so we invite all of you here in our sanctuary to join with us, but also all of you who are at home, together with our Torah readers, in offering the aliyah on page 230. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim Venatan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Kasher Tziva'oto Elohim.
Avraham bet me'at shana v'hiva lelo et Yitzchak beno v'tomer Sarah zecho kasali Elohim kol hashomea Yitzchak li v'tomer mi milel Avraham enikakvanim Sarah ki yiladati ben lizkunav vayidal hayeled vayigama vayas Avraham mishteh gadol vayom higamel et Yitzchak.
Vatera Sarah Eben Hagar Hamitzri Asher Yalda Avraham Mitzahen Vatomer Avraham Garesh Amahazot Ve'et Benah Ki Lo Yirash Ben Hamazot Im Benim Vayera Hadavar Me'od B'nei Avraham Al Odot Benaho.
Amen. Vayomer Elohim El Avraham Al Yera Be'enecha Al Hanar Ve'al Amatecha Kol Asher Tomar Elecha Sarah Shema Bekola Ki Yikare lecha zara vegam et ben ha'ama legoy asimenu ki zarahahu vayas kem Avraham baboker vayikach lechem veheimat mayim vayiten el Hagar Sam al Shichma ve'et hayaled vayishalhecha vatelech vateta b'midbar Beershava.
Vayihlu hamayim min hachemet Vatashlech et hayeled tachat achar chasifim Vatelech vateshev la mineged Charchei kim tachave keshet Ki amra al b'mot hayaled Vateshev mineged Vatisa et kola vatev Vayishma Elohim et kohana Vayikra malach Elohim al Hagar min hashamayim Vayomer la malach Hagar Atiri ki Yishama Elohim al kol hanar ba'asher hu sham.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Yesher Koach to all of our Torah chanters who prepared so beautifully and came up to read so wonderfully. I want to thank Mindy Milberg, Phil Benjamin, Ben Sion Blumchef, Isabel Goddard, and Jeremy Krendel for leading us in words of Torah today. Thank you. Yesher Koach.
With the Torah out in front of us, we turn in our Siddurim to page 244. For many of us, the Misha Berach, the healing prayer, is an opportunity to think about those who are suffering, those who struggle with illness, be it of the mind, body, soul, or spirit. We know that there are many sicknesses that can affect the people we love, but there are also sicknesses that can impact our planet and our world. As we take a moment now to name our loved ones in our hearts, we know that our healing prayer is not just for them. It is a prayer for healing for all of us, for our society, and for our world. The Misha Berach healing prayer is on page 244. We turn now to page 246. We rise in body or in spirit for the lifting and dressing of the Torah.
Zot Torah shesam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai biyad Moshe. La 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 la.
If you'll please be seated. On Rosh HaShanah, we traditionally read the Haftorah from Samuel about Hannah's struggle to conceive a child. We know that this is a struggle felt by many in our community who yearn just as she did. And so in place of the Haftorah today, recognizing the power of our words to bring comfort and support, we offer this prayer for infertility. Creator and Maker, hear the prayer of those in need, those who, as Abraham and Sarah, Elkanah and Hannah, long for children. The tears of desire are bitter, the days of waiting endless. O God, hear their prayer as you heard Hannah. Speak her silent devotion to you. God of hosts, take notice of your servant's affliction. Do not forget those you serve. Give me a child, and I will dedicate that child to the eternal. May the hopes of those who seek children and struggle with that be realized. Their prayers heard. O God of life and hope, sustainer and maker. There was a man who found the cocoon of a butterfly. One day, a small opening appeared. He sat and watched the butterfly for several hours as it struggled to force its body through that little hole. Then it seemed to stop making any progress. It appeared as if it had gotten as far as it could and could go no further. So the man decided to help the butterfly. He took a pair of scissors and snipped off the remaining bits of the cocoon. The butterfly then emerged easily, but it had a swollen body and small, shriveled wings. The man continued to watch the butterfly because he expected that at any moment the wings would enlarge and expand to be able to support the body, which would contract in time. Neither happened. In fact, the butterfly spent the rest of its life crawling around with a swollen body and shriveled wings. It never was able to fly. The man in the story failed to understand the importance of pressure and discomfort in the butterfly's emergence into the world. Squeezing through the opening was the final and essential stage in its transformation. And while it was uncomfortable and probably painful, it was also necessary. A caterpillar becomes a butterfly, a grain of sand becomes an oyster, a piece of coal becomes a diamond. All of these transformations occur in place of discomfort, of pressure, of pain. But at the end, something new, something better emerges. Real change and progress rarely occur in places of comfort. Rather, it is through facing adversity, through dealing with discomfort, through experiencing challenges that something new can be born. On this day of Rosh HaShanah, there is so much that we could speak about. We have been living through unprecedentedly trying times. We have suffered pressure and discomfort like never before, and we have witnessed so much pain and bereavement. It is easy and understandable to be consumed by the anguish. But this morning, because it is Rosh HaShanah, a day filled with hope and potential as the new year begins, I want to try to focus on a positive message. To think about the ways in which the previous 18 months of discomfort, pressure, and pain might have changed us and our society for the better. I offer these words, like so many other sermons, because I need to hear them. I need to reassure myself about the progress we are making. I need to find the positive amidst the despair. I need to believe that there will be silver linings when we finally emerge from under this cloud. I have become increasingly aware that in the midst of this challenging period, there have been positive changes in myself, in my life, in our community, and our world. These are the COVID keepers, the shifts in our lives that have taken place as a result of living through a pandemic. They can be changes in behavior, changes in beliefs, changes in attitudes. They are the light in the darkness, the hope in despair, the promise for a better future. This is not to diminish the very real pain and suffering that many of us have experienced and are experiencing. Rather, it is to acknowledge that alongside this, we might also have been positively transformed in our own lives and as a society through this period of adversity. This is and has always been our Jewish response. We have always recognized the potential for growth through hardship, to be strengthened by challenges, to emerge renewed at the end. What is the eternal journey to the promised land, if not a declaration that despite hardships and challenges, there will always be progress that will bring us closer to realizing a better world? We experienced the hardships of slavery in Egypt, but we emerged as a people, B'nai Israel, the children of Israel. We spent 40 years in the wilderness, a period filled with trials and tribulations, but through it, we became free. We received the Torah and we carried it with us to Israel and shared it with the world. Just before the pandemic, in January 2020, my grandmother in England died. With the distance and speed at which her funeral was planned, there was unfortunately no way for me to make the journey back to mourn with my family. COVID didn't keep us apart. Rather, we were separated by the challenges of geography and time. I had to hear about the funeral from my parents and sister, rather than experiencing it for myself. And I am certain that this impacted my mourning. When my Savta, my Israeli grandmother, died just over 6 months later, in the midst of the pandemic, there was no way that I or any of my British family could be physically present for the funeral in Tel Aviv. But there was also no question that we would be able to join via FaceTime or Zoom. We were able to mourn together as a family, separated by geography, but united by technology. On the 30th day after her death, I accompanied my Saba, my grandfather, as he went to the cemetery to mark the end of Shloshim, the 30 days of mourning. I was not there in person. I was actually sitting in my office here at the synagogue, but I was there on the screen. I heard his words, I saw his face, and I was able to share in that moment with him. It's not that the technology changed so drastically in those 6 months. The potential to join together digitally had been there for many years, but we rarely, if ever, utilized it in those ways. As COVID forced us to maintain a physical separation both at home and abroad, we began to engage with technology in ways that we previously had not. We have built community on the screen. We have come together to celebrate the most joyful moments, and we have comforted each other in times of suffering. And we've done all of this without leaving our homes, using technology to bridge divides and to bring people together. While I know that nothing can fully substitute for being together in person, the way that we now use technology to come together is a COVID keeper, which means that no grandchild should ever need to miss their grandparents' funeral due to the challenges of geography or time. COVID has forced us to think differently about how we come together, how we build community, and how we share in some of life's most important moments. Through the use of technology, we have strengthened and deepened our community and our connections. This is our communal COVID keeper. Not everyone will be able to join us in the sanctuary for Shabbat services, but they will always be able to join via the live stream. Our home will never be large enough to invite the entire community in to celebrate the Seder together, but our screen can expand so that all are welcome. And the synagogue will no longer be limited by the size of the building, as everyone, everywhere, can join us on the screen. We have changed as a community, and I also hope and see evidence that we have changed as a society. We have been at war with an invisible adversary that attacks everyone, regardless of race, gender, religion, sexuality, or nationality. This is a fight that has united the world against the common enemy, and at the same time, it has helped us to see the humanity that we all share with each other. These past 18 months have emphasized the way in which our individual fate depends on our collective response and action. It shouldn't have required a pandemic for us to realize how interconnected we all are. We shouldn't have needed this period of hardship to understand that we can only survive and flourish together collectively. It shouldn't have taken this moment to fully open our eyes to the inequalities that have always been present in our society, and the fact that while we are all in the same storm, we are not in the same boat. But it is no accident that a pandemic has forced us to take a closer look at our society and the way that different groups are treated. Were it not for the pandemic, we might wonder if the brutal murder of George Floyd would have garnered the response that it did. He unfortunately wasn't the first black person to be murdered by police. He was another tragic example of racial injustice. He was, at the time, the latest victim of the pandemic of racism. And yet the response was unprecedented. People came together in support of and solidarity with the black community. And the response was not just here in America, but around the world. Facing a deadly disease of the body forced us to confront a deadly disease within society. We must ensure that the awakening that we have seen to matters of racial inequality and injustice is a COVID keeper. We cannot return to the way things were, but need to ensure that the progress of this moment in recognizing our interconnectedness and interdependence is protected and maintained. We have fought this dreadful disease not by simply taking care of ourselves, but by protecting and caring for each other. We wear masks to protect each other. We have stayed home to stop the spread, and we are being vaccinated to achieve a herd immunity and defeat this disease. No longer will we only say, Kol Yisrael Aravim Ze Bazeh, all Israel are responsible for one another, because our COVID keeper is to say, to recognize and to fulfill the words, Kol B'nei Adam Aravim Ze Bazeh, all humanity are responsible for one another. And while we have changed as a community and a society, we have also changed as individuals. Under the pressure of living through a pandemic, we will all emerge differently from how we were before. For 41 years of my life, I was running. Not as an actual athlete or competitor, but in the way that I approached life. I was always on the go, always looking for the next opportunity, always eager to fill time and stay busy. This was my approach to work, as my colleagues can tell you, and this was my approach at home, as my family can tell you. Using the Yiddish word, my dad would always say that I have no Sitzfleisch, no ability to just sit still and be. And then the pandemic hit. Suddenly, we had to stay at home. We couldn't go out. We were forced to slow down. I'll admit, this wasn't and hasn't been easy for me. As someone who likes to be on the go, this enforced period of slowing down has been challenging. Yet I am also aware of the ways that it has been good for me, my family, and my work. Even though, as both my colleagues and family will tell you, I'm still very much a work in progress. In taking things slower, one of my COVID activities has been gardening. Alison Weichel, who is not just a great Jewish educator, but also a wonderful gardening instructor, has been our family's guide in this. One of the projects involved uprooting a small lilac tree that was growing in an unsustainable location to place it by the side of our house where it could be a focal point. Now, the flip side of being someone who's always on the go is that I'm not very good at waiting. I'm the person constantly changing lanes in a traffic jam or looking to see if the food is cooked. You might call me impatient. And so I was disheartened when I did not immediately see signs of growth in our little tree. On more than one occasion, I impatiently reached out to Alison to ask why nothing was happening. Each time she reassured me that I simply had to wait, that nature takes time. Slowly, I learned to stop checking the tree daily. I learned to wait. And just as promised, when spring finally arrived, buds appeared on our little lilac tree. It didn't happen at the speed I would have wanted, but it happened just the way that nature intended. The lilac tree has reinforced my personal COVID keeper that I need to slow down and be more patient. I honestly find it hard to imagine what other circumstances I would have really learned this lesson or begun slowly making this change in my life. In many ways, pre-COVID, our society reinforced this approach of being constantly on the go and running from place to place. Judaism had been trying to teach me this lesson my whole life, with a weekly Shabbat as a day of rest, a day to pause, a day to slow down. But it has taken COVID for me to really learn it and to slowly, tentatively make this change in my life. And that's my COVID keeper. It is sometimes said that rabbis give the sermons that they themselves need to hear. On this Rosh HaShanah, with a new year stretching out before us, but with so many challenges being carried over, I need to hear this sermon. I need to believe that through this period of adversity and challenge, something better will be born. I need these COVID keepers as ways of seeing light amidst the darkness. This is by no means an exhaustive list. There are many other ways in which I have changed and we have changed. I would encourage each of us to think about our own COVID keepers, to recognize the growth and learning that have taken place in the face of adversity. A journey of true transformation is never easy. We know this from the natural world, where the caterpillar becomes a butterfly, and from the Jewish world, where we become a people out of the bonds of slavery. And while this journey is far from over, on this day of joy and celebration, of hope for the new year, we can take a moment to reflect on the positives, to draw strength from our experiences, and to recognize the way in which our COVID keepers can give us hope as we enter the new year. Shana Tova. We turn now in our Siddurim to page 206 as we come to our shofar service. And we offer a poem not in your mahzor, but written by our member, Nancy Gossels. Hear now the rousing sound of shofar, reminding us of God's presence when we were young at Sinai, how the blaring of the ram's horn filled our hearts with breathless wonder as God offered us the Torah and bound us together in love. Hear now the bleating sound of shofar, recalling God's recurring mercy, how at an altar on Moriah a ram ended Abraham's anguish, ended Isaac's binding pain. Hear now the blaring call to freedom. Hear the yearning sound of hope. Hear now the weeping sound of shofar, joining us to other generations, to the prayers of all our fathers, to the sound of a mother's tears. Let it wake us now from slumber as we turn again toward God. For God hears the urgent sound of shofar. It is the sound of all our voices, primordial and pleading through all the generations, piercing the very soul of time to reach the heart of God. The blessings for the shofar are found on page 206.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lishma kol shofar. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyemanu v'gihanu lezman hazeh.
We rise now in body or in spirit, facing towards the east, where Paul Roberts will be blowing the shofar for us, as he does each and every year. Tekiah. Shavarim Truah. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shavarim. Tekiah. Tekiah. Trua. Tkiya. And for our second set of Torah shofar blasts, Tkiya. Shavarim Trua. Tkiya. Tkiya. Shavarim. Tkiya. Tkiya. Trua. Tkiya. And we give Paul just a moment to catch his breath as we offer our third and final set of shofar blasts for this morning's service. Tkiya. Shavarim Trua. Tkiya. Tkiya. Shavarim. Tkiya. Tkiya. Trua. Tkiya Gadola. Shekoach.
Yeshakach, both to Susan DeSelms and to her sister, Jamie Anderson. I want to thank you both so much. You might not recognize Jamie, although everybody here should recognize Susan DeSelms. Susan's leadership of our choir during this period of COVID has been extraordinary, and one of the ways that she transformed and elevated their work together was by inviting Jamie, a celebrated opera singer and voice teacher in her own right, to step in and work via Zoom with our choir members one-on-one and in small groups and voice lessons. So the extraordinary growth that you've heard from our choir this year is really due to the teamwork of these two extraordinary musicians and leaders. And Jamie came up to be with us for Rosh HaShanah in order to celebrate the growth of our choir. So Yesher Koach to both of you. May you go from strength to strength to strength. Thank you.
We remain standing as we turn to page 286, facing towards the east for the words of Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, lateit gedula yotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigui haratzot, velo samanu kimishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kecho hamonam, vanachnu chorim, umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech, malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu, litaken olam b'malchut Shaddai, v'nemar, v'haya Adonai, l'melech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo
As we turn to face in as a community, we turn to our Mourners Kaddish on page 292. We take a moment to think of all of those that we are remembering on this day of Rosh HaShanah. And for all those we name in our hearts, we say together, Yid Gadal v'Yid Kadash Shemei Rabbah, B'alma divarachu rutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chayachon u'v'yamechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, B'galav v'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mavarach la'alam ulmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ah v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitada v'yitalei v'yitalal Shmei dikudsha brichu. Le'ela u'le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Dam iran ba'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba min Shamaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru Amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memories always be for a blessing, and let us say Amen. If you'll please be seated. As we come to the end of our service this morning, we want to offer just a few brief announcements. And first of all, to say thank you to so many people who've made these services happen. Alongside thanking our fabulous Temple Shir Tikva staff, we want to specifically thank Mary Beth Redker, who's really held the entire High Holy Day experience together for all of us and done so much work in making these holidays happen for all of us. We want to thank our board led by Harry Merkin and our COVID task force led by Amy O'Donnell. I want to also thank specifically Richard Kay, John Legg, Roy Lurie, and Shanahan Sound for all of their technology and AV support that ensures we can hear each other in the sanctuary, and I hope that you can hear and see us at home. Thank you to Joyce Pastor, Ellen Herbert, and Susan Garfield and family for the flowers that are beautifying our sanctuary, and to Rochelle Nemro, who ensured that for the first time in who knows how long, our talitot are actually clean. Thank you to the Wayland Police and Signal 88 Security for keeping us safe, and Julio Machado and Best Value Janitorial for all of their setup work and cleaning efforts. And thank you to all of you for your flexibility and understanding over this period. As a reminder to those present in person, we do have another service at 11:30 a.m. this morning. So while we don't want to exactly chase you out of the door, we do ask that people make a swift exit at the end of the service so that we can have the parking lot ready for those to arrive then. Our Yeladim service for our youngest members is at 2:30 this afternoon, and there is a link to resources for celebrating Tashlich on the homepage of our website. Please do check the High Holy Day Guide for details on additional ways to celebrate the holidays, and registration for Yom Kippur will reopen at the conclusion of Rosh HaShanah. And so to end with one final thought. There is a story of an encounter between a US naval ship and Canadian authorities off the coast of Newfoundland in October 1995. Communicating over the radio, the Americans sent a message: please divert your course 15 degrees to the north to avoid a collision. To which the Canadians responded, recommend you divert your course 15 degrees to the south to avoid a collision. The Americans tried again. This is the captain of a US Navy ship. I say again, divert your course. But the Canadians replied, no, I say again, divert your course. In exasperation, the Americans declared, this is the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, the second largest ship in the United States Atlantic Fleet. We are accompanied by 3 destroyers, 3 cruisers, and numerous support vessels. I demand that you change your course 15 degrees north, that's 15 degrees north, or countermeasures will be undertaken to ensure the safety of this ship. The Canadians replied, this is a lighthouse. It's your call. This story, most likely fictional, but entirely believable, reminds us of some important lessons. First, we can stick to our guns under the guise of being right, but it is best to listen to others. Second, there are times that it is good to make teshuvah, to turn ourselves, not all the way, but a little bit, lest we get dashed on the rocks of our own stubbornness. I hope that we will all hear the call of this day to turn ourselves positively into this new year as we conclude our services with L'Shana Tova. Shana Tova Umetuka, may it be a happy and sweet new year for all of us. Shana Tova.